Hello and welcome to the Mythology channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of the entire story of Greek mythology, from the birth of the universe to the fall of the gods. Get cozy, settle in, and let's begin. The birth of the cosmos, from chaos to creation. Before there was time, before there was earth, sky, or sea, there was only chaos. Not the chaos of noise or confusion, but a great, endless emptiness, a deep, silent void where nothing stirred and nothing yet was born. Out of that still darkness came the first breath of creation, a faint hum, a shimmer in the void, and from it emerged the first beings, ancient and vast, more like ideas and forms. Gaia, the earth, patient, nurturing, boundless. Tartarus, the abyss, deep and shadowed, a prison yet be needed. Eros, love, the force that binds all things together. Nyx, the night, who draped the world in velvet darkness. And Erebus, the darkness itself, older even than light. Gaia, alone and eternal, began to shape herself. From her body rose the mountains, the valleys, and the first whisper of wind. But she longed for someone to cover her, to be her equal in the heavens above. So from her heart she gave birth to Uranus, the sky. Vast, glittering, eternal blue, he spread across her, and the first union of earth and sky began. From their bond came life, powerful and strange. The Titans, tall and radiant, born of divine strength. The Cyclopes, with a single blazing eye, forgers of thunder. And the 100-handed ones, creatures of immense power, with arms enough to crush mountains. But Uranus, proud and fearful, looked upon his monstrous children, and his heart filled with dread. He hid them deep inside Gaia's body, pushing them into the depths of her womb, so that the earth groaned in pain. Gaia cried out, a low, trembling sound that echoed through eternity, and from her sorrow came anger, and from anger a plan. In secret, she forged a weapon, a sickle made of adamant stone. She called to her children, the Titans, and asked who among them would dare to rise against their father. One by one, they turned away, all but one. Cronus, the youngest and most cunning of the Titans, stepped forward. He took the sickle from Gaia's trembling hands and hid himself in the shadows of the world. When Uranus came once more to cover Gaia, the trap was sprung. Cronus struck, swift, terrible, final. And from that moment of rebellion, the heavens bled into the sea and the first dawn rose. The power of Uranus was broken. The rule of the Titans had begun. Cronus, crowned by his brothers and sisters, became the lord of a new age, an age of promise and of fear. But as he gazed upon the stars, he did not see the shadow that already followed him. For just as he had overthrown his father, one day his own child would rise to overthrow him. And so the cycle of God began, endless, eternal, woven into the fabric of the universe itself. The wind quiets, the stars hum softly, and the story drifts onward to the age of Titans. The age of the Titans. The reign of Cronus. The world was still young then. The sea was bright with starlight. The mountains were sharp and new, and the sky still carried the scent of creation. The blood of Uranus had fallen upon the earth and the sea, and from those divine drops, new life had bloomed. Creatures of strange beauty and quiet power. From a foam that kissed the waves, the goddess Aphrodite was born, rising radiant and serene from the sea's embrace. But the heavens were silent now. Uranus had fallen, and his son Cronus, the youngest of the Titans, had taken his father's crown. Cronus ruled with a cold and steady hand. He looked upon his kingdom, the broad earth, the deep seas, and the high skies, and called it his own. The Titans built great palaces of gold and marble. They walked among clouds and mountains, their voices like thunder, their laughter like storms. Cronus's queen, Rhea, gentle and wise, stood by his side, and for a time there was peace. The rivers flowed in harmony, the sun rose on time, and the moon danced softly through the nights. It was called the Golden Age, a time when mortals did not yet exist, and the gods themselves tended the earth. There was no pain, no hunger, no war. Every being lived in calm and plenty, and Cronus, proud of his reign, believed the world would remain so forever. But deep within him, a shadow stirred. a whisper, low and ancient, the echo of his father's final curse. As I have fallen by my son's hand, Uranus had said, so shall you fall by yours. Cronus tried to forget the words. He buried them beneath laughter, beneath songs, beneath the glow of golden meadows. But fate cannot be buried. It waits. And soon, the whispers of prophecy grew louder. When Rhea bore her first child, a son named Hestia, bright and calm, Cronus felt joy and fear. He remembered the curse. He remembered the betrayal that had made him king. And in his heart, he feared that his own child would one day do the same. So Cronus did something unthinkable. He took the newborn child into his arms and swallowed her whole. Rhea screamed, but Cronus only said, it is better this way, for no child of mine will rise against me. And when the second was born, Demeter, he swallowed her too. Then Hera, then Hades and Poseidon. One by one, Rhea's children vanished into their father's hunger, trapped alive within his dark belly. And the world, once golden, began to dim. The air grew still. The rivers slowed. Even the stars seemed to weep. Rhea's heart was heavy with sorrow. She wandered to the forests of the earth, her cries echoing through the mountains, until she found her mother, Gaia, the earth herself. In the shadow of a tall oak, Rhea fell to her knees. Mother, she whispered, he has taken all my children. What am I to do? How can I bring life into a world that devours it? Gaia's eyes were deep and kind, filled with the memory of every age. She touched Rhea's cheek with a hand of stone and soil. Do not weep, my daughter, for the wheel of fate always turns. I once watched my own son betray his father. Now you must be brave, and watch your son end his. And so, when Rhea found herself a child once more, she made a plan. When her time came, she fled from Cronus's sight and crossed a wide sea to the island of Crete. There, in a hidden cave beneath Mount Ida, she gave birth to her sixth child, a boy with eyes as bright as lightning. She named him Zeus. Outside, the stars trembled. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Even the waves grew still. Rhea wrapped her newborn in soft cloth and kissed his forehead. Then, with tears in her eyes, she took a stone, wrapped it in the same swaddling cloth, and brought it to Cronus. The Titan took it greedily, never noticing the trick. He swallowed the stone whole and smiled in grim satisfaction. No child shall rise against me, he said. But in the dark cave of Crete, the true child slept, watched over by gentle spirits, the Curetes, who danced and sang loudly to hide his cries from Cronus's ears. They beat their shields and stamped their feet, their song echoing like thunder in the hills. And so the young god grew, nursed by the goat Amalthea, fed with honey and divine milk. The nymphs whispered stories of his brothers and sisters, of the world above, of the tyrant who called himself king. Zeus listened, and though he was young, the fire of destiny burned behind his calm eyes. Years passed. The world above still glimmered under Cronus's rule, but its light had dulled. The laughter of the Titans had grown hollow. Rhea watched her husband sit upon his golden throne, his eyes full of suspicion, his heart heavy with fear. He had everything, yet trusted nothing, and the earth itself began to ache beneath his rule. Then one evening, as the sun sank into the sea, a soft voice came to Cronus in a dream. It was Gaia. My son, she said, the time has come. You swallowed your fate once, but fate cannot be digested. Cronus woke in a cold sweat. For the first time in ages, he felt the stir of something inside him, a movement, faint but growing. And far away, in the caves of Crete, Zeus had become a man, tall, strong, quiet as a storm before lightning. He climbed to the mountain's peak and looked out across the wide world. He saw the seas churn, the forests sigh, and the heavens tremble with unseen tension. In his heart, he knew what must be done. The world needed balance again. The old must fall, and the new must rise. So he sought out Métis, the goddess of wisdom and cunning, who knew the secrets of all things hidden. Help me, he said softly. My brothers and sisters are lost. I must free them. Métis looked upon him with quiet pride. Then listen well, she said. The tyrant's strength lies not in his hands, but in his fear. We will turn that fear upon him. She gathered herbs from the high cliffs, bitter roots, and the leaves of remembrance, and brewed a potion that shimmered like starlight. Zeus returned to the palace of the Titans, and came before Cronus disguised as a humble cupbearer. He bowed deeply, offering the cup with both hands. Cronus, weary and suspicious, drank from it nonetheless. And at once the world seemed to tremble. His breath grew heavy. A great shudder passed through his body, and one by one his children returned to the light. First Hestia, calm and radiant, then Demeter, gentle and green, then Hera, proud and fierce, then Hades, shadow-eyed and solemn, and finally Poseidon, roaring like the sea. They stood before him, reborn, freed, and furious. Cronus roared in rage, his voice shaking mountains. But Zeus raised his hand, and lightning, bright and pure, cracked through the heavens for the first time. The world gasped. The Titans trembled, for the child that had been swallowed had become the storm itself. And so began the Great War, the Titanomachy, a battle that would shake the bones of the world and decide the fate of gods and mortals alike. The earth grows quiet. The stars begin to spin slowly above. And as the echoes of war begin to rise, the story moves gently onward to the clash between the old gods and the new. The Titanomachy, the war of the gods. The air grew heavy. The wind whispered storms to come. For the peace of the world had been broken, and every mountain, every ocean, every star seemed to wait in silence for what would follow. The Titan Cronus, once the proud lord of the Golden Age, sat upon his throne, his crown dimmed, his eyes burning with disbelief. Before him stood his children, the gods he had swallowed long ago, now returned to light, their power rising like a tide. They did not speak. The air between them hummed with fate. Zeus, youngest and mightiest, stood at the head of his siblings. In his right hand lightning shimmered, a gift from the ancient Cyclopes, who had forged it in the heart of a volcano. In his left he carried resolve, quiet, unshaken, eternal. "Father," Zeus said softly, "your time has ended. The world no longer needs a king who rules by fear." Cronus rose slowly, his shadow stretching across the marble hall. His voice thundered through the heavens. "You speak of fear, boy, but it was fear that built the world. It is fear that keeps it whole." And so, with a roar that split the skies, the old king struck, the earth shuddered, and the war of the gods began. For 10 long years, the heavens and the earth became a battlefield. From Mount Olympus, Zeus and his siblings, Hera, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hestia led the rebellion of the Olympians. From Mount Othrys, Cronus commanded the Titans, ancient and vast as the mountains themselves. Their clashes shook the stars. The sea boiled. The forest caught fire and bloomed again in the same breath. Even time itself seemed to falter, its flow trembling between victory and defeat. In the beginning, the Titans held the upper hand. They were older, stronger, born of the first earth and sky. Cronus wielded the sickle that had cut his father down, and his brothers and sisters, Oceanus, Iapetus, Hyperion, and Ceus, fought beside him with fire and fury. But Zeus was not alone. He journeyed deep into Tartarus, to the black pit where Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones had been imprisoned since the dawn of time. Through the darkness he walked, where no mortal breath could survive, his torch flickering weakly against the endless abyss. He called out into the void, "Brothers of stone and fire, I am Zeus, son of Rhea. I have come to break your chains." And from the shadows came a sound, the rumbling of laughter, the trembling of the earth. The 100-handed ones, vast as mountains, stirred from their long slumber. Their eyes gleamed like molten gold. Their voices boomed like thunder rolling over endless plains. "Long have we waited," they said, "for the child who would remember us." With a single gesture, Zeus shattered their bonds. The Cyclopes stepped forward, forging weapons of divine power. As repayment for their freedom, to Zeus they gave the thunderbolt, lightning bound in his hand. To Poseidon they gave the trident, a spear that could shake the oceans. And to Hades they gave the helmet of invisibility, woven from the shadows of the abyss. Together, the three brothers swore an oath to fight until the heavens were free, and the tyranny of the Titans was broken forever. The battles that followed were unlike anything the world had ever seen. When Zeus cast his thunderbolt, mountains cracked open and rivers changed course. When Poseidon struck his trident upon the sea, waves rose as high as the clouds. And when Hades emerged unseen, the ground itself opened to swallow armies whole. The 100-handed ones, each with 50 heads and 100 arms, hurled boulders like pebbles, their roar shaking the pillars of the earth. From their stronghold, the Titans fought back fiercely. Atlas, strongest of them all, bore the weight of the heavens on his shoulders, holding the sky itself as a shield for his kin. Hyperion, the Titan of the sun, threw fire that scorched the horizon, and Oceanus sent great floods to drown the newborn gods. But Zeus would not yield. His thunder grew sharper, his storms darker, and his resolve burned brighter than ever before. One night, as lightning tore across the heavens, Zeus climbed the tallest peak of Olympus. He stood alone, his hair whipping in the wind, his heart heavy with the weight of destiny. From below, the cries of battle echoed, the screams of titans, the clash of power, the endless storm of creation and destruction. He raised his arms to the sky. "Let this be the end," he whispered. "Let the world find peace once more." And then he cast the final thunderbolt. It was not like the others. It burned white and gold, a flash that blinded the stars. It tore through the heavens, split the mountains, and crashed into Mount Othries with the force of eternity itself. When the light faded, the Titans were fallen. Their cries grew distant, their power fading like a dying flame. Zeus stood amid the storm, his body trembling, his breath slow and deep. The war was over. From the ruins of Mount Othries, the Olympians gathered their strength. They bound the Titans with chains of unbreakable metal, forged by the Cyclopes themselves, and cast them deep into Tartarus, where even light could not reach. At its gates stood Cenomanes, the 100-handed ones, to guard them forever. And so the age of the Titans ended. The earth sighed with relief. The seas grew calm. The stars shimmered once more. Zeus looked upon his brothers and sisters, each weary, yet filled with quiet triumph. "The storm has passed," he said. "Now we will build a new order, not of fear, but of balance." And together they climbed to the highest peak of the world, where the clouds kissed the sky. There they built their home, a shining palace of marble and mist, its towers glowing in the sunlight. They named it Mount Olympus. From that day forth, they ruled not as tyrants, but as guardians, each with their domain, each with their purpose. Zeus, lord of the sky and king of gods. Poseidon, ruler of the sea. Hades, keeper of the underworld. Hera, queen of heaven and family. Demeter, giver of the harvest. Hestia, guardian of the hearth. The world was theirs to tend, and for the first time, the heavens smiled. Far below, in the silence of Tartarus, the Titans stirred restlessly. Cronus lay in shadow, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He said nothing, but a small, bitter smile curved his lips, for he knew the cycle of gods was never truly broken. One day, as he had fallen, so too would his son, and so too, perhaps, would every god that came after. Above him, the wind whispered through Olympus. The world shimmered with new light. The storm was over. Peace had come, for now, and the story drifts onward toward the reign of the Olympian gods and the first age of mortals. The reign of Olympus, gods and mortals. The storm had ended. The skies, once torn by lightning, were now painted with the soft glow of dawn. The earth, bruised and broken by war, breathed again. And high above, upon the shining peaks of Mount Olympus, a new order began to bloom, the birth of an age. Zeus stood upon the balcony of his golden palace. Below him, Clouds drifted lazily, and beyond them stretched the vast tapestry of the world. Mountains sleeping beneath the mist, rivers winding like silver threads through the forests, and oceans that shimmer with morning light. He was no longer the rebel sun. He was the king of gods. And yet, as he gazed across creation, his heart was restless. The world was beautiful, but empty. The creatures of the earth roamed without thought. The winds whispered to no one, and the stars sang to an audience that did not yet exist. So Zeus called a council. One by one, his brothers and sisters gathered. In the marble hall of Olympus, columns of white stone reached into the sky, and the air itself shimmered with divinity. Poseidon, lord of the sea, came first, his trident glimmering with drops of salt water, his eyes deep as the ocean floor. Hades, silent and pale, rose from a column of shadow, his cloak flowing like smoke. Then came Hera, regal and stern, her presence calm but commanding. Beside her stood Demeter, her golden hair crowned with wheat and flowers. And Hestia, gentle and quiet, brought the warmth of the hearth with her. They sat together, their light mingling in the vastness of the hall. "The Titans are gone," said Zeus. "The heavens are ours, but the earth lies barren of meaning. It needs children, minds that can dream, hearts that can wonder." Demeter smiled softly. "Then let us give it life, the creation of humanity." So began the age of creation. Each god, in their own way, poured their essence into the newborn world. Demeter spread her hands, and from her palms grew forests and fields, trees heavy with fruit, grass soft as silk beneath the morning sun. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, and springs burst forth, rivers that wound like silver veins. Through the body of the earth, Hades opened the caverns below, filling them with jewels and gold, secrets of fire and shadow. Hera shaped the order of life, the cycles of birth and death, of loyalty, promise, and consequence. And Zeus, raising his lightning high, breathed the spark of soul into it all. From clay, the first humans rose. Their eyes blinked against the sunlight. They looked upon the mountains and the sea, and called it home. They were fragile, small and trembling beneath the vast sky. And yet, in their hearts burned curiosity, a divine fire that no wind could ever extinguish. The gods looked upon them and marveled, for in that moment, the world was no longer silent. It was alive with thought and story. Prometheus in the gift of fire. Among the immortals, there was one who loved humanity most, the Titan Prometheus, whose name meant forethought. Though the Titans had been defeated, Prometheus had sided with Zeus during the war. For this, he was spared and welcomed to Olympus. He walked among mortals, teaching them to build and to dream, to carve stone, to plant seed, to look up at the stars and wonder what lay beyond. But Prometheus saw that the humans shivered in the cold, huddled in darkness when the sun fell. He turned his gaze toward the heavens, toward the eternal flame that burned on Olympus, and his heart ached. One night, while the gods slept, Prometheus climbed a mountain alone. He reached into the sacred fire and stole a single spark. He carried it down the mountain in a hollow reed, his hands glowing with its light. And when he gave it to mankind, the night came alive. The fire danced, the shadows fled, and warmth filled the world. Humanity rejoiced. They sang and laughed, and for the first time, the sound of mortal joy reached the ears of the gods. But Zeus was not pleased. He looked down from Olympus and saw the firelight flicker in the valleys below. "They have taken what was meant for gods alone," he said, "and for this, Prometheus must answer." So Zeus commanded his punishment, the chains of Prometheus. Prometheus was seized by divine chains and carried to the edge of the world, to the cold cliffs of the Caucasus Mountains. There Hephaestus, the god of craft, was ordered to bind him to the stone. Prometheus did not cry out. He lifted his eyes to the sky, and in their depths burned defiance and compassion both. Zeus decreed that each day an eagle born of the storm would come to feast upon his liver, and each night it would grow anew, that his torment might never end. The wind howled across the cliffs. The sea roared below, and Prometheus endured. He did not curse mankind. He did not beg the gods for mercy. He only whispered, "I would do it again." For in the valleys below, humans huddled near their fires, safe and warm, telling stories to one another under the stars. And perhaps that was enough. The age of harmony. Despite Zeus's wrath, the world flourished. Cities rose, music filled the air, and the gods, from their high thrones, watched with pride and growing curiosity. Hera guided families and vows. Demeter walked the fields, her footsteps turning the soil fertile. Poseidon ruled the tides, and Hades guarded the balance of life and death. Each god found their purpose. Each domain thrived. When mortals prayed, the heavens listened. When they forgot, the gods reminded them with rain, wind, and thunder. It was a delicate rhythm, a song of reverence and freedom, of awe and defiance. The world had entered its silver age, a time of beauty and balance. But beneath the harmony, the seeds of change were already stirring. For humans, though grateful, would one day begin to question why the heavens ruled them at all. And the gods, ever passionate, ever flawed, would find themselves drawn into the chaos of mortal hearts. As the sun set behind Olympus, Hestia lit the sacred flame of the gods. It flickered warmly across marble halls, casting soft light upon divine faces. Zeus looked into the fire and saw reflections of what was to come: love and betrayal, heroes and monsters, triumph and tragedy intertwined. He did not yet know of Pandora, whose curiosity would unleash sorrow into the world, nor of Heracles, his mortal son, who would one day carry the weight of both man and god, nor of the wars that would rage when gods themselves fell to jealousy and pride. But for now, the night was calm, the stars were kind, and Olympus gleamed with peace. The gods rested, and the world dreamed. The first woman and the birth of suffering. The world was peaceful. The fires of Prometheus still burned upon the earth, casting golden light upon valleys and seas. Humanity had learned to build, to sing, to harvest, and to dream. But Zeus had not forgotten. High upon Olympus, the king of the gods stood in the silver light of dawn, his eyes fixed upon the mortal world. He saw their joy, their laughter by the fire, their freedom beneath the sun. And though he loved the balance he had created, a shadow stirred in his heart. "They have grown bold," he said softly. "They no longer remember who gave them life. It is time they learned humility once more." And so he devised a plan, not of war, but of temptation, the forging of Pandora. Zeus summoned Hephaestus, the divine craftsman, whose hands could shape metal and stone into life. "Forge me a being," Zeus commanded, "not god, not mortal, but something between." Hephaestus obeyed. He took clay from the banks of the river, soft as silk beneath his fingers. He shaped it into the form of a woman, graceful, radiant, alive. He breathed into her the warmth of fire, and her eyes opened, shimmering like dawn. She was beautiful beyond measure. Every curve, every breath, seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. To her, the gods gave gifts. Athena clothed her in wisdom and grace. Aphrodite kissed her lips and gave her beauty that could stir the hearts of gods and men alike. Hermes, with his silver tongue, taught her the art of persuasion and curiosity. Even Hera, cautious yet intrigued, granted her a noble spirit, the strength to endure. When all was done, Zeus looked upon her and smiled. "You shall be called Pandora," he said, "the one who bears all gifts." And with that, he placed in her hands a vessel, a jar sealed tight, its surface carved with divine symbols. "Guard this well," he told her, "for within it lies both blessing and curse. It must never be opened." Pandora bowed her head. She did not yet know that the jar was not a gift, but a key. Pandora among men. Hermes carried Pandora to the world of mortals. He set her gently upon the earth, where the flowers bowed beneath her feet. There she met Epimetheus, brother of Prometheus, a kind-hearted titan who had once helped shape mankind. When he saw her, his breath caught in his chest, for she was unlike anything he had ever seen, a reflection of divine perfection, and yet undeniably mortal. He welcomed her into his home, and soon they lived together as companions. Days passed in laughter and peace. Pandora wandered through gardens, listened to the wind, and watched the stars dance across the night sky. But as the days turned into weeks, a whisper began to grow within her heart. The jar, the vessel that Zeus had given her, rested in the corner of their home, sealed but radiant, its carvings shimmering with hidden light. Each night, she would glance toward it, and the whisper would grow louder. It was soft at first, like a sigh in the dark. What harm could there be? A gift from the gods should not be feared. And though she tried to ignore it, curiosity coiled itself around her mind. Gentle, persistent, impossible to silence. The opening of the box. One afternoon, when the sun hung low, and the air shimmered with golden warmth, Pandora approached the jar. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced. "Just a glance," she whispered. "Only a look, and then I shall close it again." She broke the seal. The lid lifted, and the world changed. From the jar poured a cloud of darkness, shadows that twisted and screamed as they rose into the air. They were the spirits of sorrow, disease, jealousy, rage, and despair. They swirled through the house, then into the sky, spreading across the world like smoke. The rivers turned murky, the fields withered, and for the first time, humanity wept. Pain had entered creation. Where there had been laughter, there was now grief. Where there had been peace, there was now fear. Pandora cried out, slamming the lid shut, her tears falling upon the cold clay. The jar trembled, and then, from within the darkness, a small light flickered. It was soft, warm, and gentle. A voice whispered, "Do not despair." Pandora slowly lifted the lid again, and out flew the final spirit, hope. It drifted through the air like a silver feather, glowing against the shadows, and settled softly upon the hearts of humankind. And though the world remained scarred by sorrow, hope took root. It whispered to every broken soul, every grieving heart, every lonely wanderer, that light would always follow darkness. The judgment of Zeus. From Olympus, Zeus watched all that had unfolded. He saw humanity cry for the first time. He heard their prayers rise into the heavens, pleas for mercy, for healing, for understanding. And though he had planned the punishment, his gaze softened, for even in suffering, he saw beauty. Even in pain, he saw courage. "So be it," he murmured. "Let them learn, let them struggle, and let them rise. For without hardship, there could be no strength. Without loss, no love." And so he left the world as it was, not perfect, but alive in every sense of the word. The lesson of Pandora. Pandora lived the rest of her days, with sorrow and wisdom intertwined. She wandered the earth, teaching her children of what she had done, not as a curse, but as a lesson. "Curiosity is a gift," she said, "but every gift bears weight. It is not enough to seek truth. One must also be ready for what truth reveals." And as she aged, the jar remained sealed once more, kept in the corner of her home, a quiet reminder that even the smallest choices can shape the world forever. Far above, the gods of Olympus watched in silence. Hera's eyes gleamed with compassion. Demeter wept for the loss of innocence. Aphrodite smiled sadly, for she knew that from pain would come deeper love. And Zeus turned his gaze to the stars, where the balance of fate shimmered eternal. The age of innocence was over, but the age of story, of heroes, of trials, of mortal hearts defying divine fate, had just begun. Time passed, the world turned, and the generations of mortals multiplied upon the earth. The gods watched from their thrones upon Olympus, their hearts filled with curiosity and concern, for humanity had changed. They had learned to build cities of marble and gold, to speak in poetry and to fight with purpose. They had learned love and grief, an ambition that reached toward the sky. And so began an age unlike any other, an age where the blood of gods and mortals mingled, and legends were born, the seeds of the half-gods. Zeus looked down from Olympus and saw mortal women, strong, beautiful, defiant. He saw in them something of the divine spark, something wild and fearless, and his immortal heart stirred. Against the counsel of Hera, his queen, Zeus descended to the mortal world again and again, not as lightning or storm, but as man, cloaked in mortal flesh, his eyes still burning like stars. From these unions came children unlike any before, neither god nor man, but something in between. Their names would echo through eternity. Perseus, Heracles, Helen, Minos, Achilles, the first heroes. They were gifted with strength, but burdened with destiny. Each was a thread in the tapestry of a greater plan. For the gods, though eternal, could no longer walk freely among mortals. Through their children, they would live within the world they had shaped. Perseus in the head of Medusa. The first great hero was Perseus, born of Zeus, an immortal princess named Danae. It is said that his mother was locked away in a bronze tower, for her father had heard a prophecy that her son would bring about his death. But Zeus, in his eternal defiance of fate, visited her not as a man, but as a shower of golden light. And from that union, Perseus was born. When he grew to manhood, King Polydectes, envious and cruel, sent him upon an impossible quest to bring back the head of the Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze could turn any living thing to stone. With the help of Athena's shield and Hermes' winged sandals, Perseus crossed oceans and deserts. He walked through lands where shadows whispered his name. In the dead of night, he found Medusa sleeping upon a bed of serpents, her hair hissing, her breath cold as stone. He dared not look upon her. Instead, he raised Athena's polished shield and saw her reflection within its mirrored surface. One swift stroke, and silence fell. When he returned to the world of men, he held the Gorgon's head aloft. Its power was so great that even in death, her eyes gleamed with eternal wrath. And though Perseus brought peace to his mother, the prophecy, as all prophecies do, fulfilled itself in time. For destiny is the one law even gods cannot rewrite. Heracles, the son of thunder. After Perseus came Heracles, Zeus's mightiest son, born to the mortal woman Alcmene. Heracles came into the world with hands that could break stone, and a heart too vast for mortal suffering. From the moment of his birth, Hera's jealousy shadowed him. She sent serpents into his cradle, but the infant grasped them in his fists and crushed them without fear. As he grew, his strength became legend, but so too did his pain. Cursed by Hera's wrath, Heracles was driven to madness, and in his frenzy, he destroyed the very family he loved. When his mind cleared, he fell to his knees in despair. "How can I ever be forgiven?" he cried. The oracle of Delphi, speaking with Apollo's voice, commanded him to undertake 12 labors, each more impossible than the last. He faced the Nemean lion, whose hide no weapon could pierce. He slew the Lernaean hydra, whose heads grew back with every strike. He captured the Erymanthian boar and cleansed the Augean stables in a single day. He journeyed to the edges of the earth, fought monsters born of night, and wrestled death itself. Through pain and perseverance, Heracles was redeemed, and when his mortal life came to an end, the gods welcomed him to Olympus, granting him immortality, a bridge between earth and heaven. He became a symbol of endurance, that even through suffering, the soul could rise to greatness. The weaving of mortal fates. As the heroes rose and fell, the fates, the 3 sisters of destiny, sat in silence beside the thread of the world. Clotho spun the thread of life, Lachesis measured its length, and Atropos cut it when time was done. Even Zeus, king of all, could not defy their will. He could shape the path, but never the end. It was the fates who watched over every birth, every love, every death, their fingers weaving human sorrow into the fabric of eternity. And though mortals prayed to the gods for mercy, it was the fates who listened in the stillness of night. smiling as they whispered, "All stories must unfold. The tragedy of love and war. Not all heroes fought beasts. Some waged wars of the heart. There was Orpheus, whose music could charm the stones and calm the wind. When his beloved Eurydice died, he descended into the underworld and played so beautifully that even Hades wept. He was granted her return, but on one condition. He must not look back until they reached the light, and just before they left the shadows. He turned. Her name fell from his lips, and she was gone forever. Then there was Helen of Troy, born from Zeus and Leda, whose beauty could move nations to war. Men called her divine, but her life was tragedy, for from her face the Trojan War would rise. The gods themselves took sides, and the world burned beneath their pride. Even Aphrodite wept, for she saw how love, once pure, could become the seed of ruin. The lessons of the gods. By the end of the heroic age, the earth was heavy with the weight of stories. Cities rose and fell. Empires turned to dust. And yet, the voices of mortals still reached Olympus. The gods listened, and they learned. Hera began to understand. That jealousy was a chain she forged herself. Poseidon saw that the sea could not be ruled, only respected. Demeter mourned her daughter Persephone, learning the cycle of loss and return. Even Zeus, eternal and wise, looked upon the mortals he had shaped and felt something new, a quiet reverence. Perhaps, he said, it is not the power of gods that keeps the world alive, but the courage of those who dare to live within it. And so the gods turned their gaze once more toward the horizon, where the sun sank into the sea, for they knew that the age of gods was drawing toward twilight. A new dawn, the age of men, was rising, and soon even the immortals would fade into legend. The firelight of Olympus dimmed. The wind carried whispers of forgotten prayers. The constellations glittered in the sky. The lion, the eagle, the hunter, immortal echoes of heroes long gone. And as the stars turned slowly above, the earth dreamed on of love and loss, and all the stories that bind eternity to time. The twilight of the gods, the end of Olympus, and the dawn of man. The sky was quiet. For the first time in eternity, no lightning split the clouds. No divine laughter echoed across the peaks. Only the wind moved, slow and mournful, singing through the halls of Mount Olympus. The world had changed. The mortals, once trembling beneath the gaze of gods, had grown strong. They had learned to till the soil, to forge steel, to write their own stories upon the earth. And though they still lit fires for the divine, their prayers grew softer, their temples emptier. The gods, unseen, began to fade. The silence on Olympus. Zeus stood at the edge of the mountain, his gaze sweeping across the world below. He saw cities glittering like jewels, rivers tamed into silver threads, and ships cutting across the sea like arrows. Humanity had risen, just as he had always intended. But with their rise came forgetfulness. The hymns that once shook the heavens were now whispered only in memory. Altars grew cold. Statues gathered dust. Hera, beside him, watched with eyes both proud and sorrowful. "They no longer call our names," she murmured. "Do they not remember who watched over them?" Zeus placed his hand upon hers. "They remember," he said softly, "but they no longer need to. For the gods were never meant to rule forever. They were meant to guide, to teach, and then to let go." The fading of the old gods. Across Olympus, the thrones stood empty one by one. Poseidon returned to the depths, his palace of coral and pearl growing still. The waves no longer rose in rage, but lapped gently upon the shores of men. Hades withdrew to his shadowed realm, the gates of the underworld closing like the final turn of a key. No longer feared, he watched over the souls of humankind with quiet compassion. Demeter, weary of loss, walked once more through the fields of earth. Wherever her feet touched, flowers bloomed in farewell. Aphrodite turned her gaze to the hearts of mortals and found that her spirit no longer needed a throne, for love had taken root in mankind itself, a fire that would burn as long as life endured. Even Hermes, messenger and trickster, wander among men unseen, watching as trade, language, and invention bore his mark without his name. And Hestia, keeper of the sacred flame, knelt before her hearth on Olympus. The embers glowed faintly, their warmth filling the empty hall. She smiled, for she saw those same flames in every home below, where mortals gathered around their fires to tell stories of gods long gone. The last council, before the end, the gods gathered one final time. The sky darkened, and thunder rolled low and distant, as though the heavens themselves knew. It was a moment of farewell. They sat in silence for a while, the family of eternity. Zeus spoke last. "We have ruled long enough," he said. "Our names will live, not as kings, but as memories, and that is as it should be." Athena, ever wise, bowed her head. "Then let knowledge be our legacy." Demeter whispered, "And love." Poseidon rumbled softly, "And the sea." Hades smiled faintly, "And the silence that waits beyond it." They rose together, their forms already fading like mist in sunlight. The halls of Olympus shone one last time, gold and marble, fire and storm, then grew still. The fall of Olympus. In the centuries that followed, the mountain slept. Rain washed over its stones. Vines crept along its steps. The temples crumbled into ruin, their statues toppled, their altars reclaimed by the earth. But on quiet nights, when the wind moved through the peaks, one could still hear faint echoes, a laugh like thunder, a whisper like waves, a breath of warmth like fire on the hearth. The gods were gone, but not lost. They had become the stories themselves, woven into dream, spoken in prayer, remembered in every act of courage, every song, every sunrise. The dawn of man. The world entered a new age. Mankind built cities greater than any temple. They crossed oceans once ruled by Poseidon, and looked to the stars once claimed by Zeus. They gave names to new gods, not of thunder or sea, but of knowledge, of art, of love. And though the faces changed, the essence remained, for the divine was never gone, only transformed. Every act of kindness, every spark of creativity, every sacrifice for love or truth was Olympus reborn, in mortal form. And somewhere in the quiet beyond the sky, the old gods watched, not as rulers, but as proud ancestors. Epilogue, the eternal story. And so, the tale of Greek mythology comes to its gentle close, from the birth of a universe, to the reign of the Titans, to the wars of gods and the rise of men. Every moment has been a heartbeat in the story of creation. The gods have faded, but their whispers remain, in the rustle of the wind, in the crash of the sea, in the pulse of every living thing. They are not gone. They are within us, in our dreams, our fears, our endless search for meaning. For as long as one soul looks up at the stars and wonders where it all began, the gods will never truly die. The story continues, not in heaven, but here, within the quiet fire of humanity. And as sleep takes you, perhaps you will dream of Olympus once more, golden halls above the clouds, laughter like thunder, and gods who once walked the earth, watching still, in silence, in love, forever.